Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Avengers Infinity War broke our hearts so cruelly that many of us are still in that weird denial stage of grief. For example, not long after the movie came out, a theory went around that Loki did not actually get his neck snapped by Thanos, but that he had actually disguised himself as the Hulk, and Thanos merely chiropractored a projection. Sound far-fetched? Well, shut up, we're grieving! And by the way, go watch my video on that theory because it affects this theory. Because now with the Infinity War digital HD release, our conspiracy theories have 1080 lines of resolution and razor-sharp background details to help us evade objective reality. And many of you have been reaching out to me once again about Loki and new details that have emerged with the recent Infinity War release. Could Loki still be alive? Did he fake his death? Well, let's talk about it. Let's get to that proof. Okay, the shot people are talking about is in the first sequence of Infinity War after Thanos beats down Hulk and kills Heimdall, and Loki steps out to try to sneak attack Thanos with a dagger. Thanos stops him with the Space Stone and he chokes him to death. But if you look very closely at the background, you can see a very subtle shadow in the space outside the ship. Some have said that that shadow could be Loki. Loki perhaps wearing his signature war helmet with the large horns that curve upward. The idea of this theory is that this Loki that we see die is just a projection, and that the god of mischief is observing this all go down from outside the ship. It's kind of like that Hulk Loki theory, just without the Hulk part. Now, it's not just the shadow that the theorists are buzzing about. There were Loki's final words to Thor earlier in the sequence.
I assure you, brother, the sun will shine on us again.
And people are wondering why Loki, as a brilliant tactician, would think just jabbing a dagger at Thanos would work, or why he would use his left hand, since they argue most other times he appears to use his right hand. And I gotta admit, while I rewatched this scene, Loki's eye line might be a little too veered to the left, possibly past Thanos' eyes to the real version of himself outside. Now look, I have been fooled before by Marvel, and Loki hasn't done himself any favors in the past by faking his death before and masquerading as other characters, so let us at least try to give this theory its due. What would this mean for Avengers 4? Well, it would vindicate Loki's dying words to Thanos.
You will never be a god.
Loki's trick would prove that the Mad Titan, despite all the universe-altering power he gains in this movie, still has limits and blind spots. That the power of demigods like Thor and Loki still escapes Thanos' grasp. I think it would also mean that all the characters we saw die pre-snap are back in the toss-up category. Already it looks like characters who faded away won't be dead after all. And it's increasingly sounding like Gamora, or at least a ghost of her, will continue to be a presence that haunts Thanos from inside the Soul Stone with butterfly kisses. It would also more closely follow the unkillable presence Loki appears to be in the Marvel comics. Like many villains and heroes, no one ever really stays dead for long. Like killing characters and resurrecting them in the comics is all kind of part of a cycle to raise stakes and repeat over and over again to sell more and more issues. And with Infinity War, Marvel head Kevin Feige has proved he's not afraid to dramatize the most implausible twists from the comic panels. This whole Avengers saga film series has gambled on that premise that movies could work like comics, and that gamble has paid off. Here's the issue though. This Avengers Infinity War digital release didn't just enable us to scour the background for high-res details, it also included a pretty good commentary track by the filmmakers. And when it came to the decision to kill off Loki, this is what they said. Director Joe Russo said, part of what we wanted to do out of the gate was to unsettle you as you're watching the film. You're sitting in the theater thinking most characters in the Marvel Universe have been safe for a decade. And we wanted to knock you off kilter and make the audience understand that the stakes were going to be significant and the cost was going to be very high in the movie. So they wanted to show Thanos immediately taking out the current reigning champ, the one major villain who still managed to get away. All to declare that there is a new, even more dangerous villain in town. So those are real emotional stakes that the writers and directors thought long and hard about. And it just makes too much sense for this all to be some cover story for a really implausible fake death twist. That would probably piss everyone off. And sorry to rain on this parade too much, but that shadow outside the ship, it looks a lot like the floating pieces of debris that we saw at the beginning of the sequence, drifting away from the Asgardian ship as Thanos' forces attacked. So this might just be another case of that hanging munchkin in the background of the Wizard of Oz theory. You remember that fan theory? That was the one where people thought that they saw a munchkin hanging himself in the background of a scene of the Wizard of Oz, all out of some weird unrequited love with Judy Garland. Turns out, no, it was just a big stupid bird, which the set dresser released into the set for the scene. The reason this theory exists exists is some jerk edited footage to add a shadow in the shape of a hanging body that made the rounds in the 90s and left a ton of people convinced that a bunch of actors and set crew people and editors and directors are all incapable of seeing a hanging body prominently in the background of a movie. Even though, by the way, this would have been impossible because all the Munchkin scenes were shot way later in production and none of these actors would have been on set yet. But guys, the truth is boring. And besides, both parts of that theory were wrong. That hanging Munchkin was totally just Loki. He's using the time stone to go back in time to 1938. A time stone that was also just a projection when Doctor Strange gave it to Thanos. Thanos, by the way, was first spotted lumbering around in Northern California in the 60s, 9/11. A question for you guys. If Loki did fake his death, what do you think would be the coolest way for him to return in Avengers 4? Maybe in the post-credit scene of Captain Marvel, smacking into a Kree warship like his brother did to the Guardians? Or maybe sneaking into Thanos' barn while he sleeps and slipping on that charred gauntlet, saying, "I'll do it myself." Or maybe Rocket will just play Weekend at Bernie's with Loki's corpse for 2.5 hours. Look, if you're so desperate for him to come back, you gotta be open to anything. Comment down below with your thoughts, or tweet me directly at Erik Voss with your thoughts on all this stuff. And follow New Rockstars on Twitter for updates on our videos. Like this video, share it around, and subscribe to New Rockstars. And double check to see that you are subscribed. YouTube's randomly unsubscribing people from channels these days. And hit that bell icon to make sure that you're getting notifications. Thank you for watching, and you know what, Loki's still alivers? Don't listen to the non-believers. The truth is out there.